Well, I want to welcome our guest today. We have a very special friend of mine. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist, an empowered eating coach for women, and a Reiki master, along with a whole host of other things. Welcome, Sarah.
Thanks. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I'm just grateful for you to come, and I want to really let our audience know a little bit about you and how you got into pretty much everything that you're interested in right now.
Yeah. If I go back to the beginning, I had moved to California from New York in my early 20s and was wanting to be as healthy as I could and started to go on these diets and work out a lot. And that all led me to develop an eating disorder. And that journey inspired me to figure out how to heal. And I sort of made this vow to God that I was going to heal myself and then figure out how to help others heal and commit my life to that. So that set me on this path of going back to school to become a therapist and specialize in eating disorders. And then I began to explore alternative healing modalities like Reiki and tapping and energy work. And I began to fuse those two together. And I found this really beautiful combination of psychotherapy and energy work and alternative modalities, and brought that forth in supporting women who are struggling with food and eating issues. And since then, it's just expanded to really serve any person who's suffering and finding ways to heal the deeper roots of those issues.
I think that's so beautiful as a clinician to be able to see the value in using alternative healing modalities to help clients, because it's not just a mental challenge. There's emotionality to it, and there's spiritual components to it. And how have you seen that, taking that approach, help with your individual clients?
The truth is that when I first started out as a therapist, we are doing more talk therapy and working on the mental level. And that was not producing the true healing that I was desiring for clients. And it wasn't for myself either on my healing journey. So I knew there was something missing from just the traditional psychotherapy approach. It's valuable and it has its place, but it wasn't getting quite at the root issue. And so for me, exploring the alternative modalities really did bring in the importance of healing the emotional and energetic and spiritual roots. And that creates, to me, a holistic healing approach.
Absolutely. The whole person, every piece to it. Oftentimes, at least I'll speak personally, and my experiences with therapy, it kind of is like taking everything out of the kitchen cabinets and it's sitting there, but you just don't know really what to do with it.
Totally.
Yeah. So I really think that approach, that holistic approach, will make a huge difference in the results that you're seeing and the level of contentment and happiness people may gain.
And it did. That's what I started to see, is as I brought these modalities together and fused it with traditional psychotherapy, people were actually starting to really see the true shifts because they were doing the deeper inner work and liberating and healing and repairing the root traumas and beliefs and wounds that were driving whatever the problem was that they were experiencing, whether it's, your eating issues or symptoms of depression or anxiety or beliefs of not being good enough. Being able to really identify where that came from and heal the root is a really important piece in healing.
Yeah. Well, and it speaks to like kind of raising a person's conscious and awareness, like that. I don't know that in your typical therapy session, a therapist may be thinking necessarily along those lines, finding out where it began.
Right. And there's so many different types of therapies
Right.
and therapists. And as in any profession, there are doctors who are really good at what they do and some who aren't as skilled. And so, not to put all therapists into a box and generalize, but in general, we find that talk therapy is only working one piece of the puzzle. Mm-hmm. And I've been seeing the trend of more and more therapists starting to really understand the importance of doing the somatic work and the energetic work and beginning to bring that into the therapeutic space. So it's pretty exciting to me that we're on this new frontier of how we're approaching mental health and the ways that we're treating it.
Well, and you said somatic, and I think a lot of people don't understand that we hold these emotional traumas in our physical body, and that then those then manifest into physical ailments and dis-ease, and how if you really aren't treating all of those components, you'll get sick.
Yes.
And it's not just emotionally sick, it's the physical body saying, I have to process this or I'm just going to continue to deteriorate.
Absolutely. So even though time may pass, feelings buried alive never die. And we think, oh, that thing happened in the past. It doesn't affect me in the present. But to your point, we hold it. Our body holds it. All the pain, all the trauma, all the emotions of the past that we weren't able to process, especially during childhood, because as a child, you don't have the awareness or the skills or capacity to do that. And if you didn't have parents who had the emotional capacity to support you in processing that, most of us are holding on to a lot of old emotional content. And it requires us to do a lot of processing of the past.
Yeah. And that can be really daunting, I think. And so a lot of people just kind of stay asleep, you know? It's easier to not have to go down those roads. But in reality, it's like, but is getting sick easier? You know, we don't have anything unless we have our health, right? Nothing else seems to really matter if we're not well.
Which is why the illness and the disease tends to be the turning point for most people. It has to get so bad and so painful or so sick or so unwell that you're in that rock bottom place before you realize something has to change. And that's usually the thing that becomes the doorway back into one's inner world and the healing work.
And wholeness. I know I think of like the universe whispers, and then it's a stern voice, and then it's a shout, and then it's a brick wall. You know, like you're gonna listen and you're gonna learn. We can do it the easy way, or we're gonna just keep at it. And it is true. You know, eventually we do have to deal with that.
Yeah, and I've run into the brick wall over and over again a few times thinking it's not going to be there this time, or I'll bust through it. And it's so funny how often we have to play out the pain pattern before we realize this isn't working and feel the inspiration to start to find something that does work.
Well, and to expand on that, I think of oftentimes in my own healing journey, I've been like, oh, I've worked through that. I've processed it. I'm good. And then like a year later, it's like, no, you haven't. Like, here's another layer of that onion that's being peeled away. And so I think we were just talking yesterday, and I said, you know, if you think you know everything and you've arrived, you've absolutely learned nothing. Like, the truth is, I know nothing. You know, the more I keep learning, the more I realize I really don't know.
Same.
Yeah.
And I think you're so right. We revisit the same pain points and patterns again and again, because as we're healing, we expand our capacity to go deeper. And so when we start the healing journey, maybe we're only able to access the first layer, but the roots are deep and the pain is deep. So the more we can heal, the more we can feel, which means we can feel deeper, more painful layers.
Wow, Sarah, I had never thought of it that way. That is 100% true.
Yeah. And it messes people up because when they start the healing journey, they think, I'm doing the healing work, so I'm going to feel better. And without fail, every single time what people find is they feel worse because they're getting better at feeling.
Yeah.
And so now you're feeling all the pain and hurt that you weren't able to feel before. And it's intense. There's a reason why we numbed ourselves to it or we suppressed it, because it's hard. The emotional work is work, and it's not easy. And, you know, that's why there's people like me who are here to support you in doing the work, because we're not able to access a lot of that pain on our own. It's just too much.
Well, and I think you would agree that you are the guide. And I think oftentimes people put a counselor or a healer on this pedestal and that they have all the solutions and answers for you. And really, you're facilitating that healing, that inner knowing that's buried down below all the conditioning. You're just helping them along the way to find that voice again.
Completely. My job is not to heal you or fix you, and I can't. So any person who says they can, that might be a warning to just think again before
red
you
flag.
a red flag, because only you can heal yourself.
Yeah.
Only your body can heal itself. The doctor, the therapist creates the container and the environment for the healing. I think of myself as the person who's transmitting to you truth. I'm transmitting safety. I'm holding up the mirror for you to see yourself or access parts of yourself you didn't even know were there, and to show you how to liberate it or to guide you through doing that work. But the same way as if I were a guide leading you up Mount Everest, I can't actually do the work to get to the top. I can show you the way, but you have to do the work. And so that's why it's a collaboration, and we get to do it together. And I'm there with you, but you are the agent for change. You are responsible for your healing.
And I really feel like you are a prime example of someone who's chosen to get into this line of work and yet continues to do your own healing work. We were just talking about this new training that you're taking, and I'd love for you to just kind of touch upon that if you would.
Yeah, I do believe if I'm going to walk you through the depths of your pain, I have to go there myself. And as you said, the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know.
Right.
And it's the same for me. I really want to be a master at my craft. And the more I learn, the more I realize there's so much more I don't know. So I'm really devoted to just continually being a student and doing my work so that I can better support people through their work. And it's very humbling to do that. You're like, dang, I've done a lot of work and there's still so much more here. And so this program has been for me a container for my own inner exploration. It's called the Luminous Awareness Institute. And it's a space where I'm learning how to do different awakening practices to come into alignment with true nature and a higher level of consciousness. And that requires identifying any limiting beliefs, patterns, parts that inhibit that, that are stuck in our system or that keep us small or in limiting beliefs. And so it's been a pretty intense journey of liberating a lot of old gunk from my system, especially connected to childhood development and the stages of development and attachment. It's a lot of attachment repair work. So it's been a very transformational journey for me and something that is helping me better help clients for sure.
Yeah, which is a beautiful thing. And I think you were kind of mentioning that they help you kind of determine which chakra, or you start with your root chakra. And, even things like having a traumatic birth can affect our level of fear in life that we're not even conscious of. And so that is some deep work. I probably wouldn't say go start there, that might be a little overwhelming for someone who's getting into spirituality and into these healing practices. But it's definitely, when you mention it, I'm like, man, I'm always looking to take more trainings. I'm just hungry for knowledge on self-awareness and consciousness. And it sounds like a beautiful, beautiful experience.
It really is. And what you're pointing to is so important, is that there's impact when we're really young, pre-verbal, pre-memory. So if somebody comes into the therapist's office and we want to talk about your problems, no one remembers. You don't have memory of what happened when you were 6 months or 1 year old, but the body still holds the memory. Your nervous system still holds that conditioning or fear or feeling of abandonment. And so to be able to uncover and liberate from the system the patterning that was put in place when we were very young is an important part of the healing journey. And it's something that's challenging to do because it's not something our mind can uncover.
Right.
It's something that we have to uncover through the body.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'd like to talk with you about your experience pre-COVID and post-COVID, and have you noticed like an uptick in mental illness, depression, anxiety, all the things? Are you seeing more of that than you did prior?
Yes, I think COVID did have a significant impact on people's mental health in a variety of reasons. A lot of my clients were single women living on their own, and then lockdown happened, and they were just stuck in a space by themselves, fully disconnected from other people and not able to go live life. That has profound impact on someone's psyche as well as habits. A lot of people I worked with had an uptick in turning to food to self-soothe and relying on food as the source of connection to love or safety. And there was an impact on depression and overall feeling of well-being and connectedness. And we know that isolation is really a huge factor in people experiencing symptoms of depression. And so although we're now through COVID, the impact of that on people and their psyche is still there. And a lot of people are having to work to undo what they started to experience during that period of time.
Yeah, I would imagine. I mean, we are, our very nature is to feel connected. We aren't meant to be isolated at all. And it was like the perfect storm. And recovering from that, I feel like, is a little bit of an uphill battle. See if you agree with me that Western medicine counseling, it may not be filling in all the blanks, so to speak.
True. It's one piece of the puzzle, but the problem is systemic. And there are so many components that are impacting somebody's health and symptoms of depression or anxiety. We need to look at the toxins in the environment and in the food, how you're nourishing yourself, your lifestyle, your relationships, your traumas, your self-care, your mindset. And so traditional medicine, psychotherapy is maybe looking at the mind or looking at the emotions, but we need to be looking big picture at all of these components. And that's something that Western medicine alone can't just address in a 1-hour healing session.
Right. Well, and I think back to like my mom. She was a little blue and she's been on antidepressants for 30 years and she physically is addicted to them. She cannot get off of them and she doesn't really need them. And had a doctor actually sat down and said, maybe we should get you into talking with somebody before he just wrote a script and said, here you go. Like, I don't know that the Western system is fully thinking through the implications of prescribing very powerful drugs. I think that overall, most people just think of them as benign and harmless.
It is a challenge we're facing because the medications are treating the symptom. And there is a place for them and they can be helpful to an extent, but they don't treat the root.
Right.
And we need to be working to make sure that that's happening in these settings. And a lot of times we're just putting Band-Aids on the wound rather than actually healing it. So I am seeing a shift where more and more people are realizing, okay, how we've been doing this and just prescribing pills like isn't actually the solution. It's not actually creating the true healing that people are craving. And we need to make sure that we are creating a very robust, holistic treatment plan that is including other modalities and ways of supporting someone in healing the root.
This really impacts a lot of people, but do you believe that prescriptions are effective at getting to the solution?
Not at getting to the solution. They can treat symptoms, and there can be a place for them at really helping people to mitigate the symptoms or to bring a sense of well-being. But in terms of a long-term solution, it's not getting at the root. And so I always encourage people, if you're going to choose to take medications or pills, make sure you're also choosing to do work that works on the solution, because otherwise you may find that you're just existing, medicating, but not actually experiencing true healing or well-being. And I know that's not how people want to live. People are really wanting to experience true health and freedom from depression or anxiety. And you can't get there with medication alone.
And I think that oftentimes, and I'll speak from personal experience when I have been on prescriptions, that it creates a whole host of other problems, new symptoms, new side effects, and just this overall blah feeling. That's how I felt. And I just encourage people to really look at all the solutions and options that are available to them.
Yeah, and what's going to work for one person is going to be different to what works for another person. I know people who medication has really supported them, and without it, they find they really struggle. And other people who have no interest in being on medication. They don't want to be dependent on that or put something synthetic in their body. Yeah. And so they're choosing, alternative approaches. And so there isn't a right or wrong way, but to just really encourage people not to become one-dimensional in just thinking medication is the only solution, because it's not a solution. It's just a support for the symptoms.
Well, and people need to remember too that doctors don't know everything. They're human beings. They make errors. They may have had less training than some, and so there's a reason they call it practicing medicine or medical practice.
Absolutely. And it's helpful to remember that big pharma is an industry, and they do make money on pills and people being sick or dependent on them. So there's a place for it, and keep in mind that sometimes that agenda gets pushed a little harder, and the more alternative healing modalities don't get the same airtime, because if they actually are working to heal you, there could be an agenda there that's impacting.
There's no business.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
a lot of people are looking for alternative healing modalities in lieu of medication and in lieu of the just typical Western protocol. What has been like one of your go-tos for healing?
I have so many that I love, but I'd say some of my big go-tos are things like energy work and Reiki. I use a process called emotional freedom technique, or tapping, which works on your acupressure system and energy meridians, as well as your cognitive functioning. There's other things like plant medicine or breath work. And of course, movement, nutrition, lifestyle, exercise also need to be addressed and taken into consideration.
Yeah. How would you describe ketamine for someone who's never heard of it?
It is a medication. Ironically, we're talking about medication, but it's a different type. It works different than antidepressants. It's been used for over 50 years. So it's legal, it's safe, it's effective. It's been used in vet clinics. It's been used with children. It's really an anesthesia. So it helps to dissociate you from the body and from thoughts. And what they're finding is that it's working with the synapses and neural networks. So it works on a different part of the brain than traditional antidepressants, and it's creating neuroplasticity in the mind. So researchers believe that it's allowing the brain to reconnect neural networks and establish new pathways of thinking, feeling, and behaving. So it's great at recreating habits, at breaking mental rumination and mental loops, at changing self-image and negative thinking, and even helping to complete fear pathways for traumas and pains that people have held onto in the mind and body.
Some people may not know what a neural pathway is. Can you just kind of touch on exactly what that means?
Yeah, they're the pathways in our brain, the sort of like highways. So it's where information travels. And they say neurons that fire together wire together. So if you think a thought, I'm not enough, and you think that thought again and again and again over your lifetime, it's strengthening that neural pathway of I'm not enough. And that becomes a really strong highway in the mind, which means that's the automatic thought that we have. It's the automatic habit loop, because the more we practice something, it becomes permanent in the mind. And so when we're wanting to create new neural pathways, we're wanting to create a new highway. Like, let's take a different path. Let's create a different thought or belief. And that means we have to stop using the old highway and start to build a new highway. So ketamine, as I mentioned, is creating these new neural networks and synapses to support us and actually building new pathways in the brain. And those pathways get to create new ways of thinking, new ways of feeling, new ways of behaving. And then that gets to become solidified in our mind as our automatic way of being versus the old way that we've been conditioned and from where we've been operating.
Which is amazing. I think of the book How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan, and he explains it like, it's a mountain and you're skiing down it and you've created these grooves, and what plant medicine or ketamine can do is snow on that mountain and so you can create new pathways down. That talk about getting to the root or rewiring the root,
Yeah, I view it as an accelerator.
Yeah.
It's like, let's more easily support the brain and being able to do what we want it to do.
And once again, a tool.
Exactly.
Another tool, not the end all be all, but an aid.
100%. So it's not the solution. It's not a magic pill. It's not going to magically put new thoughts in your mind. You still have to do the work.
Yeah.
You still have to do the integration after the sessions. And that's true for any plant medicine. The journey itself is not going to change your life. You have to still work on every day changing how you're thinking and the choices you're making and how you're taking care of yourself or how you're relating to others. But the tool is going to support you in more easily establishing that as the new pathway, the new ski slope.
Yeah. So we've heard a lot in the news lately of Matthew Perry and his unfortunate situation with ketamine. Do you feel like there's people that it may not be appropriate for?
Yeah, and their job is to go to the doctor and get screened and let that doctor decide based on a number of factors, and they'll write a prescription. And as with any medication, too much of any medication is going to have negative side effects. So it's just a matter of getting the right dosage for you and making sure that you're screened for it.
Yeah, because I have had addiction challenges, and I went to a physician and had my 6 infusions, and I never struggled with the need or desire to do more. To me, it is a very overwhelming emotional experience that I do not want to go and have every day. Kind of like with plant medicine. To me, it would be almost impossible to become addicted to that because it's so much work and it really takes a lot out of you emotionally. So I don't want that every day. No thanks.
Yeah, and I think that's a great example of what the experience typically is. Everybody's different. So I think somebody has to really tune into their own body wisdom and just listen to if that feels something that's aligned for you. But consult with the doctor or a therapist, and you guys can decide together what's going to be right and appropriate treatment.
Yeah. So one thing I noticed as someone who's undergone the ketamine treatments, I was very despondent, very emotional, crying, suicidal nearly. And after one session, I was almost, I don't want to say cured, but I wasn't feeling that way. And I went home and I slept well. And so to me, the effect is in pulling you out of that really strong negative emotional vortex, it was very beneficial.
That's incredible that you had that experience. And a lot of people have had similar experiences, which is why I think it's starting to become more popular as an option because of the benefits that people report. And everybody is different. So it's important that if someone's considering this, they understand there is no guarantee.
Yeah.
You have to watch expectations because there's so many factors that are going to influence the experience and the outcome. Trends show that it's really beneficial and there can be some immediate improvements. And I know for myself, I've had my journeys where afterwards I have a few days where I'm still processing the emotions and I wasn't feeling immediately better. It took me a week or two to really start to feel the shifts happening. And so everyone's journey and experience is going to be unique to them. And that's why having a really good support team to help you process whatever's coming up or to help you integrate your journey can be an important piece of what that treatment looks like.
And I think that that's something that's super important that a lot of people don't understand is that integration component, right? And getting all these profound insights and downloads and then not knowing what to do with them and exactly how to process them and why it's so important for you to be working with someone who has experience that's licensed in this area.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's why I've completed training in ketamine assisted psychotherapy, because the integration work and what you do with what you've discovered through the journey and how you apply that to your life and in every way of living and being, that is so important for the long-term trajectory of how you're going to feel and what your progress is going to look like. Something that I'm weary of and that I see more and more in the plant medicine world is people are going, having an experience, but not doing the work afterwards. And they're just chasing the next experience and expecting the journey itself to be the thing that heals them. And that's not actually true. The journey gives you the insight, the perspective shift. It allows for some healing. But what's most important is how you then integrate that into your daily life. And so if you're missing that piece, I think you're going to find that you're not quite making the long-term progress that you're wanting. And you're going to find that you are relying on plant medicine, maybe the same way you were relying on antidepressants or something else.
Or food or drugs or alcohol.
To be the quick fix or to give you the mood shift or to get an altered state, but you're still trying to escape yourself.
Yeah.
And so when you're not on any substance, like, can you be with yourself and can you be with what's arising? And do you know how to support yourself in the moments where you're not feeling good or where a negative thought comes up or where you're in a conflict? That is what matters more than anything, in my opinion. Ketamine gives you a reset, but it's up to you to do the work afterwards to actually make the changes. And if you don't do that, you're going to find you're going back to ketamine again and again, but not actually getting the results that you need. So doing the integration and the work matters more than anything, even the ketamine journey.
Right. The definition of insanity, right? If you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always gotten.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's no magic solution that's going to just do it for you. So you have to do the work.
With such a strong presence of social media, especially for women, how have you seen that affecting body dysmorphia, eating disorders, and what's something people don't know about it?
It's having a huge impact on women and young girls in particular. There's so much misinformation that people are exposed to about what you should be eating or what is healthy and about how your body should be. And that is really confusing. So many people are just unsure how to actually take care of themselves. And that's leading to a lot of disordered eating habits and just ways of being in relationship with yourself and your body. And the thing that people don't know is that ultimately, while we're influenced by social media, the issue isn't food and the issue isn't body. The issue is going to be a much deeper issue connected to self-love, worthiness, and safety.
I know there's a lot of sensitive wording around eating disorder or disordered eating. What is something you never say to someone who's going through this?
Never tell them that they should eat. Never tell them that they should stop eating. So I know when I had an eating disorder and I was underweight, people would say to me, oh, you just need to eat a cheeseburger and make these comments telling me what to eat. And then I encounter people who struggle with emotional eating or binge eating, and people tell them, well, just stop eating, have willpower, just use control. And it's not that easy. This isn't about willpower or control. There are deeper issues driving these relationships. And to tell someone to just not do it or to just eat really is invalidating and harmful.
And I think it's important to say, let's just not comment on someone's body, whether it looks fantastic or it doesn't, or in your opinion doesn't. Bringing up someone's physical appearance who's really struggling, you think you're doing good, but you're actually doing more harm.
Yeah, we think compliments is helpful, but it can backfire in a few ways. The first is somebody is seeking that validation all the time, so it actually reinforces their desire to lose weight or look good according to societal standards. Or it can piss somebody off because they think, oh, you didn't think I looked good before, so I wasn't enough then, and now I'm enough for you. And there can be a lot of resentment and hurt in that too.
So things that I have read that in eating disorder can be very challenging to heal. What has been one of the things that has really helped you?
That's where these alternative healing modalities supported me. Because if you're just working on food and trying to control your eating, you're missing the deeper layers. For myself, there was a lot of unprocessed trauma that I needed to heal. And so emotional freedom technique, Reiki, inner child healing, these really supported me in processing the pain that was causing me to turn to food to self-soothe or to try and feel better from all of the things that were making me feel bad.
Well, to me, that seems very similar to even something like substance abuse. It typically comes from something in the past that is unresolved, and it's just manifesting in this particular way. And I think, as a society, we need to get rid of this stigma around people who are struggling with various different, and really have compassion for the fact that this is a problem that's come from a long, long time ago.
Yeah, it's extremely prevalent. More people than we realize are struggling with some form of disordered eating tendencies. And to your point, as with any addiction, if you're turning to alcohol or cigarettes or food as the means of self-soothing, that is just trying to make you feel better because there's some unresolved wounding that needs to be looked at. And to have that compassion that there's some deep pain driving the pattern. It's not that you're flawed. It's not that you're broken. It's not that there's something wrong with you.
Or you're bad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's that you're hurting and your brain is desperate to find a way to try and make you feel better.
Yeah.
It's just doing that through food or a substance that isn't actually doing anything to heal you.
Yeah. People want to help when they have a loved one who's struggling with an eating disorder or body dysmorphia. What is the number one thing that's no-go that you don't say?
Don't comment on their body. It usually backfires. You may think that you're being helpful. Maybe they've gained some weight and you think they look good and you tell them that. But what they hear is, I look fat, or I wasn't good enough before, or they get resentful because they feel like you're judging them, even if your intention is to support or compliment them. So I would advise people to just not comment on someone's body, no matter what, even if you think it's positive.
Like an example would be saying to someone like, oh, you look so healthy now. You really didn't look very well last week, but now you look healthier. Like that probably is not a good thing to say.
Totally. It's a backhanded compliment.
Yeah.
Because people think, oh, I didn't look good before.
Right.
Or people can really get hurt thinking, you only like me if I look this way. And what if I change or gain more weight? Or what if I end up losing weight again? Will you not like me as much? So there can be a lot of self-image pieces attached to that.
Yeah. I would say most people probably don't know about inner child and inner child work. Can you just kind of touch on that?
I personally think it's probably one of the most important parts of the work because we all have inner children that are alive inside of us. These are the parts of ourselves when we were children growing up that got frozen in time, that were hurt, that didn't have their needs met, or that got frozen in a belief or an experience, a trauma, and they still live inside of us. So even if you're grown up and an adult, you may get triggered and that inner child part comes up and has a tantrum or comes up and feels not good enough or wants to argue or fight. And it can run the show. I think there are so many adults walking around in the world who are just little kids stuck in big bodies because they have so many of these wounded child parts that are dictating how they think, feel, and behave.
That's amazing because I had just gotten back from this ayahuasca retreat and it was very focused on finding when that split occurred. And according to them, and I think in psychology, a lot of people believe that there is a moment in someone's life as a child, typically under the age of 5, that something happens, and it doesn't have to be this big T, it can be a little one, where you learn that the world is not safe to be who you are. However that looks.
Yeah, and those moments can be really surprising. I have so many people who sit down with me and we talk about their childhood and they say, I had a great childhood
Right.
with loving parents and no traumas. And then we start to go into their subconscious and meet these child parts. And the memory that comes up as the moment where they felt so hurt, unloved, or not good enough usually shocks people. They can't believe it impacted them in that way because it seems to their adult mind looking back so minor.
Right.
But for the child to experience what I often see, for example, is someone's sibling is born. And the moment their baby brother came into the world, mom and dad gave all their attention to that child. And they have a memory of being alone and feeling so sad and thinking, oh, they don't love me anymore. And that gets locked in their system. And they spend their whole life trying to prove they're enough and earn mom and dad's love and affection. So they become overachievers or perfectionists to prove their worthiness. And that shows up and drives our adult patterning, the way we're trying to strive for success or how we try to earn affection in romantic partnership. And it's all because of the seemingly harmless moment that happened to them as a child.
Yeah, I always say it's like it could be something like you didn't get picked for the kickball team and you stood there and everybody else was picked and you weren't. And then, like, bam, that becomes your belief. I'm not good enough. Nobody
Exactly.
wants me.
And between the ages of 0 to 12, that's when our beliefs about ourself and the world are formed. So if you have a lot of those little micro moments, imagine how a child over time may start to come to this conclusion: I'm just not good enough, or there's something wrong with me. And those self-image beliefs really become hardwired into our psyche. And most adults are struggling to change those. And we try to change them through positive self-talk or affirmations. But if you're not working with your inner child to actually change the belief of the inner child, you're probably going to have a hard time truly changing the beliefs you have about yourself as an adult.
Very interesting, because right now I have a picture of myself as 5 years old on my phone, on my screensaver. And it's like a reminder, and I've heard a lot of people using this technique, like, would I ever speak to a 5-year-old the way that oftentimes I might speak to myself? Absolutely not. So why am I talking to myself that way? That little 5-year-old needs love and compassion and nurturing. And guess what? I get to give that. I get to reparent that all over again. It's beautiful.
That is such a powerful realization to have when you recognize I can't go back in time and change my upbringing, but I can begin to reparent myself right now. When you know that that part of yourself, that young 5-year-old, still lives inside of you, and instead of criticizing her to change or scolding her to be better, you get to give her such a nurturing, loving environment. You get to give yourself the very thing you needed when you were younger to feel loved and safe and enough. And that is what healing is, when we start to do that for ourselves.
Yeah. I just so appreciate you coming. Your insights are so valuable, and I think are going to touch a lot of people who've been in the healing game for a long time and people who are just getting started. And I really wanted to thank you for taking this time to come and be here and share today.
It was such an honor. Thank you for letting me share with you whatever I could offer into this space and for your listeners.
Well, I love you, and until next time.
Love you too.